I rise today to honor and celebrate the life and legacy of an extraordinary man, a giant among senators, and a dear friend, Senator Orrin Hatch. He was a man of vision and unparalleled legislative accomplishment. As the longest-serving senator in Utah's history, his unwavering dedication to our state and country during 4 decades of public service will be remembered for generations to come. Few individuals have left such an indelible mark on the United States Senate. He did this through his legislation. He did it through the relationships he had with other senators. He did it through bipartisanship. He did it through his relationship with presidents of both parties. Like his good friend Ted Kennedy, he was a lion of the Senate.
That was Republican Senator Mitt Romney of Utah, April 27, 2022, talking about the man he replaced in the U.S. Senate, Orrin Hatch. He had died 4 days earlier. Orrin Hatch was a senator from 1977 until 2019, 42 years. That made him the longest-serving Republican in U.S. Senate history. But his legacy was more than longevity. As Mitt Romney pointed out, Orrin Hatch was close friends with the late Democratic senator from Massachusetts, Ted Kennedy. The Kennedy-Hatch bipartisan friendship, the odd couple, as you'll hear Senator Hatch call it, that's the part of Orrin Hatch's Senate legacy that we explore in this episode of C-SPAN's The Weekly. C-SPAN interviewed Senator Orrin Hatch in October 2018, just months before the end of his Senate career. He was asked what he thought his legacy would be. His answer focused on Ted Kennedy.
Well, you know, I've passed, I think, over 800 bills, most of them very important bills. Nobody's ever done that before. And I'm not bragging about it, I'm just saying that I've worked my butt off every day I've been here. But I think my legacy is that I was able to bridge the gap between Democrats and Republicans. And to bring people like Ted Kennedy across. Not just Ted Kennedy, but a lot of others as well. But I use Ted Kennedy because everybody knows him and knows how liberal he was and what a partisan he was as well. But I could get him to come across and not be as partisan. And I know he loved me. I know that he cared. And I cared for him. I really did. I mean, we was getting awful fights. I mean, we'd be yelling and screaming at each other and maybe not yelling, but certainly arguing with each other. And he didn't want to do that with me anymore. But, you know, I was with him when he had the stroke here in the Senate, and I went to the car with him, and you know, he knew that I loved him and cared for him.
You wrote a song about him and Vicky.
Souls Along the Way, yeah. Yeah, and Vicky was the greatest catch of his life. You know, Teddy lacked a lot of things, but he was the leading liberal Democrat in the United States Senate. And he was a rollicking, fun-loving, interesting, but sometimes very partisan, mean guy. And I kind of got a kick out of all that. Coming from Pittsburgh, where I had to face all kinds of obstacles and difficulties and hatred and everything else, it wasn't hard for me. And gradually, we just grew to where we cared for each other.
Here's one example of bridging the gap, as Senator Hatch called it. CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program. In 1997, Senators Kennedy and Hatch came together to create CHIP to provide health insurance to vulnerable children. It was a Republican-controlled Congress working with a Democratic president, Bill Clinton, that brought the program into existence. 10 years later, now a Democratic-controlled Senate and a Republican president, George W. Bush, it was time to reauthorize the program. On September 27, 2007, Senators Kennedy and Hatch spoke about each other on the floor of the Senate. Back to back, you'll hear first Senator Kennedy, then Senator Hatch.
Mr. President, I see my friend and one of the principal architects of the CHIP program on the floor, and I know he desires to speak for some time, so I'm glad to accommodate. I think I'm going to speak on both of the measures that are before the Senate, both the CHIP program as well as the hate crimes though I don't know whether what the desire of the senator from Utah would be, but I'd be glad to yield to him. Mr. President, as the instructions to the Senate, later in the morning we're going to have an opportunity for the Senate to express itself on what is commonly known as the Children's Health Insurance Program. Children's Health Insurance Program, a program that's effectively been in place now for some 10 years and has made a very significant and important difference in the quality of life for children. It's been said, and I certainly agree, that really the great test of a nation and a civilization is how it cares about its children. And some 10 years ago, the senator from Utah, myself, others, were very much involved in the fashioning, the shaping of this legislation. It's made a very, very important difference, which we'll come to in just a moment, to the quality of health care for children in this country.
And I remember when the distinguished senator from Massachusetts and I sat down together, and we're from two opposite poles in many respects, although he doesn't realize that he's a lot more conservative than he thinks. And he thinks I may be a lot more liberal than I think. But when the Kennedy and Hatch can get together, people around here say, well, if they can get together, anybody can. And people tend to get out of the way because they know that it took a lot of effort for us to come together. But the original CHIP bill could not have occurred but for my distinguished friend from Massachusetts and the work that he did. And even though that hasn't been broadcasted very much in the current debates, it's true. And in the current debates, we wouldn't be as far along if it hadn't been for the efforts of the distinguished senator from Massachusetts.
Senators Kennedy and Hatch served together on the Judiciary Committee. They participated in several Supreme Court nomination hearings. Here's an exchange they had during opening statements on July 20th, 1993. The nominee for the High Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I believe my colleagues will agree with me that two members of this committee deserve special recognition for their service on this committee and in the Senate. The distinguished senator from Massachusetts, Senator Kennedy, has been a member of the Judiciary Committee since February 13th, 1963. 30 years, 5 months, and 1 week of service. This service included 2 years as chairman. I do not mean to age the senator from Massachusetts, but his service on the committee began so long ago, I had to ask the Senate Historical Office to look it up. Fortunately, they did not have to go back as far as the Jurassic period, although he does tend to dwell in that period from time to time. 19 Supreme Court nominations have occurred during this time. Of course, we all know that Senator Kennedy has continued a long and distinguished family tradition of public service. Many Americans have gotten involved in public service as a result of the example of the Kennedy family. But I might add for other history buffs that Senator William E. Borah of Idaho, during his 31 years on this committee from 1909 to 1940, witnessed 22 Supreme Court nominations, a record which Senator Kennedy is now approaching. The senator from Massachusetts, however, is a mere youngster, next to our distinguished colleague, the senior senator from South Carolina, Strom Thurmond, chairman of this committee for 6 years.
Judiciary Committee Chairman Joe Biden called on Ted Kennedy for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to extend my appreciation for the kind words of my good friend from Utah, and it's a pleasure to serve on this committee with Tyrannosaurus Hatch.
7 months before Senator Kennedy died, he and Senator Hatch had another funny exchange during another hearing for a Democratic president's nomination. On January 9, 2009, the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, chaired by Ted Kennedy, considered President Clinton's nomination of Hilda Solis for Labor Secretary. In this clip, you'll hear Senators Hatch and Kennedy jabbing each other, with Senator Hatch speaking first.
Like I say, I intend to vote for you, and I'm very proud of you and commend you for having this great opportunity, commend the President-elect for choosing you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we know that Senator Hatch is as well as on the Finance Committee, so he has additional kinds of responsibility on our Human Resource Committee and also on the Finance Committee.
You're trying to get rid of me right now.
I've been trying for 30 years. I thought I'd try the soft soap today.
I know a lot of people have been on your side, too. but I know a lot of people who are happy that you've been such a loser with regard to that.
Very good. Good to see you.
It's great to see you. It's always great to be with you. I respect you so much and love you personally. You know that.
Good. Thank you.
In spite of all of the difficulties you bring my way.
Ted Kennedy died of a brain tumor on August 25, 2009. 3 days later, Orrin Hatch spoke at Kennedy's memorial service, held at the John F. Kennedy Library and Museum in Boston.
It's a great honor for me to be here with you today to talk about a man I have so much regard for, so much reverence for, with whom I've done battle for 33 years. And have enjoyed every minute of it. We're like two fighting brothers, to be honest with you. There are a lot of things I could say about Ted Kennedy's career, but what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes to talk about Ted Kennedy, the man, and Ted Kennedy, my friend. By the time I came to the Senate in 1977, Teddy was already a giant among senators. As a Republican coming from Utah, I stated numerous times on the campaign trail that I planned to come to Washington to fight Ted Kennedy. In fact, I used to say that Kennedy's name was my very best fundraiser in the country. When I came to Washington, I hadn't the slightest idea that I would eventually have a strong working relationship with and love for the man that I came to fight. And if you would have told me that he would become one of my closest friends in the world, I probably would have suggested that you need professional help. But that's exactly what happened. People have called Teddy and me the odd couple, which was certainly true. There are a few men with whom I have had less in common.
Senator Hatch also told this joke about their legislative collaborations.
Whenever Teddy and I would introduce a bill together, Teddy would tell reporters that if he and I were on the same bill, it was obvious that one of us hadn't read it. This always got a huge laugh, as it did just now, and I was usually just left there grinning, pretending it was the first time I've ever heard him say that. So one time I decided to come prepared. Right after Teddy made his remark, I pushed out a copy of the bill that was heavily highlighted and said, "Here you go, Ted. You can have my copy. The important parts are already underlined." I think Ted got a bigger laugh out of that than all of the reporters who were there.
Orrin Hatch served through 7 presidencies and 9 Senate Majority Leaders. He gave his farewell speech to the Senate on December 12, 2018. He offered more insight into his unlikely friendship with Ted Kennedy, and he posed the question the Senate still wrestles with today.
My unlikely friendship with the late Senator Ted Kennedy embodied the spirit of goodwill and collegiality that used to thrive here. Teddy and I were a case study in contradictions. He was a dyed-in-the-wool liberal Democrat. I was a resolute Republican. But by choosing friendship over party loyalty, we were able to pass some of the most important and significant bipartisan achievements of modern times. From the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act to the Ryan-White Bill and the State Children's Health Insurance Program. These were really important bills, and we were able to work together, even though we differed widely on politics. 9 years after Teddy's passing, it's worth asking, could a relationship like this even exist in today's Senate? Could two people with polar opposite beliefs and from vastly different walks of life come together as often as Teddy and I did for the good of the country? Or are we too busy attacking each other to even consider friendship with the other side?
On C-SPAN's The Weekly, we don't answer those questions. We leave that to others. We do something else. We give you the raw history. You provide the opinions. And that's it for this episode. A reminder, you can do your own searches in the C-SPAN video library. Just go to cspan.org and use the search bar on top. Learn more about Orrin Hatch, Learn more about Ted Kennedy. Learn more about hundreds of other senators, some of whom even from opposite parties, who actually like each other. Thanks for listening, and happy searching.